Less than 1 hour ago, something critical happened, and a believer needed to hear this warning before the noisy world could drown it all out. 37 minutes ago, a new order was signed, one carrying that believer's name. Not an invitation, not a reward, but a notice, a summons. And as they receive this warning now, it means heaven wanted them to know before the consequences unfold. They might wonder, why me? What have they done? But indeed, this is not punishment. It is a signal, a warning wrapped in mercy. Because before any storm begins, there is always a whisper, a still small voice that tries to prepare the ones he loves most. And that is what this is. The whisper before the thunder. The paper bearing their name was not printed in any office. It was not carried by any earthly messenger. It was written in a place where shadows meet decisions, where enemies talk about them without saying their name aloud. Somewhere in secret, someone decided their future without asking their permission. And tonight, heaven intervened to interrupt that meeting, to stop them from walking blindly into a snare they did not set. Yet God's child must not fear. Though terror wants to grip their spine, right now they must listen closely. They are not in danger because of something they did today. This started long ago, while they were busy living, working, hoping and praying, while another was busy watching, waiting, and collecting small pieces of their life like puzzle fragments. They did not move when they found them. They stored them. They studied them until they believed they had enough to build a case against them both in the physical and in the spiritual realm. They called it justification. In truth, it was accusation. This was not about their reputation. This was about their identity. They wanted to rewrite who they were. They wanted to take their story filled with growth and redemption and twist it into evidence of guilt. But this truth is being revealed now, because that dark plan is collapsing even as they move. It falls apart because truth has already started to move faster than lies. The believer must understand how it began. Indeed, last winter when the nights were long and they felt forgotten, someone close to them made a choice that set this all in motion. A word spoken carelessly, a conversation overheard. It sounded small, then almost harmless, but in the realm beyond sight it echoed, and that echo became permission for the enemy to open a file under their name. Every wrong word spoken against them was recorded. Every misunderstanding magnified, not because they deserved it, but because they were chosen for something too powerful to remain unchallenged. The darkness does not attack what it is not threatened by. The faithful must remember that. Every battle they face, every rumor, every delay, it all confirms their significance. Now they must listen. The warrant carrying their name, it is not printed in ink. It is written in fear, jealousy, with no authority over them, though others think they do. Enemies are convinced that silencing their progress will somehow restore what they lost. But they do not realize this is divine reversal season. What was meant to humiliate them will soon honor them. What was planned to expose them ends up exalting them. Even now, unseen forces are being repositioned. Angels are gathering around the place where their name was spoken. Their wings brush the edges of that document, erasing false charges before they can take root. But to receive this, they must stay alert. They cannot ignore this divine moment. They cannot dismiss this as coincidence, because heaven does not repeat itself when warnings are ignored. The Father warns his child with urgency. They have entered a countdown. A spiritual timeline is now activated the moment their eyes met these words, and in the coming days they will start noticing signs. Sudden silence from someone who used to speak often. A strange dream that feels too real. A delay that seems inconvenient but will save them from harm. They cannot ignore those signs. They are not random. These are checkpoints of divine protection. The enemy expects them to panic. He expects them to doubt. But what he does not realize is they are shielded differently now. They have matured. They have learned to discern whispers that once confused them. And because of this, what was meant to destroy them will expose the enemy. Let us look deeper into this, because every believer deserves the full truth. When the warrant was signed in the Rotswither Ode Citavote, unseen realm, total silence followed. Afterward, complete unnatural silence. Even the spirits carrying the decree hesitated, because the name written on that page was not ordinary. The believer's name glows differently. It bears marks from prayers whispered. In the dark, from the nights they cried out without words, and from the faith they showed when no one watched. That light made them nervous. They wanted to deliver the decree, but the brightness of that name began to scorch it. So what did they do? They changed their strategy. Instead of attacking openly, they shifted to subtle tactics. They whispered to people around them, stirring up doubt offenses and hidden resentment. They wanted to weaken their circle before confronting the believer directly. That is why certain friendships have felt unstable lately. That is why plans keep collapsing at the last second. They thought it was bad luck. It was not. It was spiritual interference. But the Lord turns even interference into instruction. He allowed some of those delays not to punish you, but to distance you from the ones who signed your name into gone darkness. You thought you lost support, but really you lost sabotage disguised as support. You thought doors were closing because you were unworthy. In truth, those doors were locked because poison waited on the other side. Every rejection was divine redirection. Now here is what you must know about this hour. The accusation itself is not physical, but its consequences can become physical if you agree with it. That is why you must refuse guilt that is not yours. Refuse to rehearse your past mistakes in your mind. Refuse to identify yourself by the rife version of you that no longer exists. The warrant holds power only if you validate it with shame. Once you stand in your identity, it burns away. The Lord says, there is a phrase you must remember tonight. I am not under accusation. I am under redemption. Speak it, whisper it, write it down. Every time you declare it, light interrupts darkness. Right now, even as you breathe, a council is gathering in the spiritual realm. On one side are the accusers' voices that speak your faults louder than your faith. On the other side stands your defense. Angels, prayers, promises, and the blood of his Son testifying on their behalf. This is no fiction. It is a battle of words. The winning side will be the one they agree with. Will they align with fear, or will they choose grace instead? That is why they needed to hear this. They are not powerless in this process. They hold the deciding voice. When they choose to believe, they are still forgiven. When they choose to rise and walk as though their record is clean, they render that warrant null and void. The signature written in deceit starts to fade the moment they say, I am free. There is something else they must know. The person who initiated this in the physical, someone they once trusted. We did not understand the full consequences of those actions. They were misled. They thought they were protecting themselves. In their fear, they aligned with a darker intention without realizing it. They shouldn't hate them. They shouldn't curse them, because even that betrayal is about to become their testimony. For redemption is not only for the innocent, it is for everyone returning to light. When this storm passes, and it will, they will look back and see that every false accusation, every delayed blessing, every lonely night served a single purpose: to fortify them, to train their spirit to hear heaven clearly. So when the Lord reveals a warrant was issued, they must grasp its true meaning. It means heaven allowed exposure so truth would triumph. It meant the darkness overplayed its Hunt. It meant their story just reached its turning point. They were no longer the accused. They were the evidence proof that grace wins, that mercy restores, that destiny cannot be chained by lies. They had to stay alert. Their next chapter was beginning. Before it unfolded, they had to prepare their heart, purify their thoughts, speak life over their future. Now that the child had heard the beginning and now understood what was signed and what it meant, it was time to know who stood behind it. They deserved to see the faces hidden behind the fog, the ones who whispered their name in dimly lit rooms, for the truth wouldn't set them free. If it stayed hidden, it had to be spoken, brought into the light and faced. They had always felt it, hadn't they? That uneasy pull in their spirit when certain people smiled at them, but their eyes felt hollow. The instinct that tightened their chest when they were around them, though they could never explain why. They thought it was just anxiety. It wasn't. It was divine discernment. Their spirit had been trying to warn them for months, but they kept silencing it because they didn't want to judge. They wanted to believe the best in them. The Lord loved that mercy in them, their purity, and that constant hope that people would change. But now that very same heart was what the beaver enemy tried to exploit. One of those people was no stranger. In fact, they had prayed for them before. He defended them when others spoke against them. He covered them in grace even when they gave him reasons not to. They knew this. They remember his kindness, his loyalty, and that's exactly why they were chosen. Because betrayal only works when it comes from those close enough to be trusted. The enemy could have used anyone, but he needed someone who knew his patterns, his emotions, his soft spots. And so the enemy waited until they felt overlooked by him, until a fence grew quietly like a vine around their heart. Then he whispered, "You're the victim. They don't see you. You need to protect yourself." And in that deception they signed what they thought was self-defense, but was, in truth, an agreement with darkness. But we must remember, not every betrayal looks like a knife in the back. Sometimes it looks like silence when he needed words. Sometimes it looks like distance that doesn't make sense. And sometimes it looks like someone using his own words against him. That is how this deep wound was built, piece by piece, through small lab misunderstandings, twisted intentions, fragments of truth stitched together into a lie that almost looks real. That's why so many believe it, because it carries pieces of truth dressed in deception. But hear this, those fragments are being shattered now. God is exposing what they used. Every screenshot, every whispered rumor, every accusation that was built in the darkness is brought into the open, into light where it loses power. Lies crumble under exposure. Truth never panics when seen. Even now, angels are moving in ways they cannot imagine. They are not fighting with swords of steel, but with revelation and truth that pierces falsehood like lightning. Every secret conversation spoken against their destiny is being replayed in the spiritual realm, not to humiliate, but to reveal their true motive. And when that motive is exposed, judgment reverses. But there is a deeper truth for his children, something most do not understand. When a divine warrant is issued against a chosen one, heaven never responds with panic. Heaven responds with preparation. So while they were drafting accusations, he was drafting their defense. He was orchestrating divine appointments that they thought were random. That sudden phone call from an old friend, that unexpected delay that frustrated them, that small moment of peace that made no sense in the chaos. All of those were strategic placements, intentional, because he was setting their defense in motion before the case even began. They are not late. They are right on time. This is what is about to happen in the unseen realm. This very night, a spiritual courtroom has convened. The accusers are presenting evidence, twisted memories, half-truths, echoes of their past failures. They shout those charges as if they still matter. But on the other side, their advocate stands radiant, calm, and unshaken. He does not shout. He does not argue. He simply holds out his hands, his scars still visible, his blood still fresh. And as those accusations fill the room, those holy scars speak louder. They testify the debt has already been paid. Every sin is canceled. Every failure is redeemed. As his voice fills the courtroom, something incredible happens. The believer's name glows with light again. The ink of condemnation starts to fade, replaced by pure light. Every letter that once spelled guilt is rewritten by grace, and the paper that once condemned them is now transforming into something else, a decree of elevation. Yes, his child. The paper meant to destroy them will now be used to elevate them, because that is how he works. He does not erase battles, but transforms them into testimonies. He does not silence accusers, letting them speak long enough to witness their own defeat. They are no longer the target, but the turning point. They might ask why the Lord let their trial go this far, why he did not stop it sooner. But he reminds them that diamonds are not formed in calm waters. They are born under pressure. Without this fire, they would not have seen the impurities around them, nor known who truly stands by them. For them and those who only stand close, they would never have learned the difference between true loyalty and proximity. But now they know. Every trial reveals the truth, and this one has exposed what no conversation ever could. They have watched the masks fall and hidden motives unfold as the whispers come to light, and now they are wiser, stronger, sharper in their discernment. But that is not the end for them. There is still more unfolding. While heaven defends them, God calls them to prepare their hearts, because in a few days there will be a confrontation, not violent and not physical, but emotional and spiritual. Someone who once accused them will suddenly reach out, not out of guilt, but out of sheer confusion. They will feel something they cannot explain, a heavy weight, a stirring, an unease that will not let them rest until they face them. They must not react with anger. Instead, meet them with quiet strength. To look at them and instead of saying, "I told you so," to say, "I forgive you." That moment will break a chain in both of their lives. It will release a ripple of healing that stretches further than they realize. Because forgiveness is never weakness. It is warfare. The enemy does not know how to handle a forgiven heart. They forgive not because others deserve it, but because freedom deserves them. Now the Lord wants to show them something that is happening right now, in the unseen, as their forgiveness releases light a room in the enemy's camp begins to tremble. The very walls begin to shake. The same table where they signed their name begins to crack. The papers they used to curse them are catching fire without a single match. And those who stood so confidently moments ago now whisper in fear, for they realize what they started has now turned against them. That is the turnaround he promised them, the divine backfire of injustice, a holy turnaround. Even now heaven is issuing a counter order. A scroll is being written in golden light, sealed with his name, and it is being delivered directly to the very realm where their false warrant came from. But this decree does not accuse, it redeems. It cancels, overrides, and completely overturns. It carries the declaration case dismissed. Favor is reinstated, divine authority restored. And when this order is fully released, which will happen soon, everything connected to their name will shift. The stagnation they have felt, those strange pauses in their blessings, the closed doors that made no sense, all of it will break open, because the blockage was not lack of faith. It was simply spiritual opposition. Now that the opposition is being overruled, divine acceleration will begin. They are about to experience moments that defy human logic. Unexpected opportunities will appear without explanation. People who ignored them will suddenly remember their name. Paths they thought were sealed will now open with ease. But they must remember this when restoration begins. Humility must remain. They must not boast of the downfall, who wronged them. Instead, they thank him quietly, for their exposure was never meant for their entertainment, but for their enlightenment. Their name has been cleared in heaven, and what is cleared in heaven will soon manifest on earth. But there is one final instruction before the next shift begins. For the next few days, guard their words. They must not speak fear or anger. They shouldn't rehearse pain aloud. Every word from their mouth is a key. It either locks or unlocks doors in the prate spiritual realm. They must speak only of the freedom he has given them. They should say often, my record is clean. My destiny is active. My name is protected because it is. Even now, angels are stationed at the entry points of their life, their home, their relationships and finances. They aren't passive observers, but sentries. They stand with drawn swords, not against people, but against the spirits that use them. Every attempt to reopen the case against them will now fail before it begins. Every false narrative will collapse before it reaches ears meant to harm them, and every curse spoken in jealousy will return to the sender unfulfilled. They are not under investigation anymore. They are under divine intercession, and his intercession never fails. At this very moment, a divine seal is being stamped onto their name. It remains invisible to human eyes, but in the spirit world it glows like fire. It bears a single word, redeemed. This means no accusation can stick to them anymore, no matter how loudly it screams. The blood has spoken louder. For his beloved, this was never about destruction. It was about divine distinction. He allowed this storm not to break them, but to mark them, because after this there will be no doubt about who they belong to. They are stepping into an era where their very presence will shift atmospheres. Darkness will recognize their name and afflay, not out of fear of them, but fear of what stands behind them. They have survived the silent war. They have passed the secret test. Now the verdict is read free, chosen unstoppable. But the story isn't finished. There is one final revelation, the moment when heaven turns the ashes of this battle into the crown of their next calling. That is what the Lord reveals next. They must stay still, stay aware, and prepare their hearts. For in the final part, he will reveal where this spiritual battle was truly leading, what treasure was hidden beneath the trial, and how the very forces that came against them will become instruments for their next breakthrough. The warrant has been burned, the record erased, the judgment reversed. Now the ascension begins. For his child, the hour has shifted. The weight that once pressed upon them has begun to lift, though they may not fully feel it yet. They might still sense the echo of that old fear, like the shadow of a storm, after the rain has stopped. But listening closely, that trembling they feel inside is not anxiety anymore. It is transition. Their spirit is adjusting to freedom it has never known before. This is what deliverance feels like. Quiet at first, then powerful. The warrant that once carried their name has burned to ash, and the ashes have been swept into the wind of his spirit. No trace remains, not in heaven's records, not in earth's memory, not in hell's accusations. The page that once accused them now glows, with their destiny written in gold. He has written something new over their life, and if they could see it, their eyes would weep with awe. It says, set apart for greater things. They see now that everything that happened, every false accusation, every painful silence, every night they cried, and no one understood it, was all leading to this unveiling. He wasn't punishing them. He was preparing them. He wasn't ignoring their prayers. He was aligning their answers with time itself. When he said the ascension begins, he meant it. They are entering the elevation season that the enemy tried to sabotage through that false warrant. And the irony, the very forces that moved to destroy them are now being used to lift them higher. That is how the Lord works all things together for the ultimate good. His faithful stand at the edge of a divine turnaround, not only spiritually but tangibly. They will soon see it in daily life. The very people who doubted them will begin seeking out their counsel. The same voices that tried to silence them must now acknowledge the immense grace resting upon their name. The doors that once rejected them will reopen not out of pity, but because God has commanded them to. He is rewriting the story around their name. But before promotion comes visibility, and with visibility comes exposure. That is why he keeps their hearts grounded in humility and deep forgiveness. For promotion without humility can become pure poison, yet promotion wrapped in peace becomes purpose. So as the Lord lifts them, remember, the miracle is not just surviving the storm, but refusing to let the storm change who they are. They did not let bitterness take root. They did not let anger consume their calling. They stayed gentle when hardness would have been far easier. And that softness, that mercy, that grace is what truly separates them. That is what proves they are His. Listen very closely. The Lord reveals what is happening right now in the unseen. In the spiritual realm, the courtroom, where their name was once spoken, has transformed. The benches are completely empty. Their accusers have fled. The air that once felt heavy now hums with pure light, and where the judge once sat there is now a throne radiant, brilliant, and alive. Upon that throne sits the very one who bore the scars for them. His eyes blaze like fire, yet his voice is peace itself. And in his hand he holds something, a scroll wrapped in white silk sealed with his emblem. This scroll carries the new decree. It replaces the original warrant, heaven's final word over their destiny. And as he opens it, the words written inside are no accusations. They are instructions, blueprints, assignments. They are the next phase of their calling. They are being recommissioned. Heaven has officially reinstated their authority, but this time it is stronger. This time they walk not as one tested, but as one trusted. The trial they endured has proven their faith, and what was once probation becomes promotion. Even now, as he speaks, angels are carrying that scroll to the earthly realm, to their atmosphere, to their home, to their heart. They move like wind, unseen, but undeniable. They'll know they have arrived because something will shift around them. Peace will fall suddenly. Burdens will loosen. An idea will come that feels like revelation. That is when their new decree has reached them. When it arrives, his child responds. They never ignore it. They never question it. Opening their hands, they whisper, I receive it. And that divine transfer will complete. Because this decree is active, not symbolic. Active. It carries divine favor. It brings complete restoration. It brings financial repayment for what was lost during the attack. Every delay they endured has built compound interest in the spiritual realm, and now comes their return. Doors once locked by false accusations are reopening with increase. They will receive more than was stolen. They remember asking the Lord why. Certain blessings seemed to vanish just before reaching them. This was the reason. A false warrant intercepted what was theirs. But now that it is destroyed, those same blessings are released in double measure. They will see unexpected provision, sudden open doors, and divine connections moving faster than logic. Delayed favor is not favor denied. It was simply rerouted until the air cleared, and now it is clear. But this next season will require deep awareness from them, because promotion attracts attention, both divine and demonic. They will face moments where the enemy, it tries to whisper again, what if you fail? What if you don't deserve it? When that happens, they must remember what the Lord told them: the warrant no longer exists. Accusations have no address left to land on. They are unreachable by shame now. So when fear knocks, believers don't answer. Instead, they let faith speak from deep within. They declare the case is closed. My story is sealed in grace. That declaration alone will scatter every lingering shadow. because truth carries real authority, and every time they speak, heaven echoes their voice. There is a sacred mystery here, one few truly understand. Believers know how the enemy always gathers evidence from their past, but there is one thing he never expects. The evidence they carry now becomes the weapon of their testimony. They will tell others how they were falsely accused, yet still highly favored, how they were nearly destroyed, yet still delivered. And that testimony will break chains in others. That is why God allows these trials. He wants their story to have authority, not borrowed authority, but lived authority. People do not need perfect heroes. They need real survivors, and that is who they are. Their scars will speak louder than any sermon, and every time they share what he did, someone else's warrant will burn, someone else's chains will break, someone else's heart will rise again. That is how redemption multiplies, not through words alone, but through stories, carried in the trembling hands of those who saw the darkness and still chose light. Now believers are called to take this next moment and do something prophetic, to close their eyes, breathe deeply, and to imagine themselves standing before a massive door made of light. It hums softly like wind and thunder. Intertwined on that door is their name, bright, untainted and glowing. That is their new identity. That is their future waiting. Their hand reaches out toward it. The moment they touch it, the light rushes through them, through every cell, every memory, every regret. It erases the echo of shame, filling them with calm power. That is what is happening in the spirit. They are walking into that new space. This is the moment of divine exchange. Pain exchanged for purpose. Accusation traded for authority. The delay for destiny. That heavy weight is finally lifting. That is no illusion. Real transformation. The same heaven that warned them at the process beginning is now celebrating their crossing. The same God who whispered, "Stay," still is now saying, "Move forward." Because the season of warning has ended, the season of triumph begins now. The Lord knows they have walked a long road. They have grown weary at times. They have questioned whether any of this was even worth it. But see what has come from it: clarity, purity, and strength. They no longer need validation from those who do not see them. They no longer chase approval that was never meant to fulfill them. They now walk with heaven's stamp upon blank their soul. They are no longer waiting to be chosen. They have already been confirmed, and their heavenly Father is proud of them. There is something else. They have noticed how lately time feels different, slower, some days faster. Others, that's because they've stepped out of their old alignment and into divine timing. What took months before will now happen in days. What once felt impossible will now become natural, because when grace takes over, effort becomes ease. This ease isn't laziness, it's alignment. And alignment is the true sign that the battle is over. They are shown a vision of what's next. They are standing on a high place, not in pride, but in purpose. The wind around them is golden, shimmering. Behind them lies the field of their old battles, the pain, the tears, the confusion. But in front of them is a vast open valley filled with people, countless faces waiting for the very message they are hearing right now. And their mouth opens and words pour out, not rehearsed, not forced, just truth, raw healing truth. And as they speak, light ripples through. The crowd and those who were bound begin to rise. Chains fall, eyes open, hope returns. That's their next mission. They're not just a survivor, they're a carrier of light. And as they walk forward into that calling, they will see miracles unfold that others only dream of. He will see provision appear out of nowhere. He will watch people healed just by hearing his voice, because his voice now carries the frequency of freedom. It's been purified by trial, sharpened by pain, and anointed by grace. This is his time. The same heaven that warned him of the danger now releases him into destiny. The same voice that said, "Stay alert," now says, "Go forth." His name is cleared. His path is lit. His favor is active. And before he takes his next step, he is urged to say this aloud, whisper it, if he must but say it with faith. The warrant is gone. The past is closed. His story belongs to God. Now breathe. He is free. He is chosen. He is unstoppable. And this is not the end. This is the beginning of everything that was waiting for him on the other side of accusations. He goes forth. The world needs what he carries. Heaven is watching. The angels are smiling. And the Father is proud.